It was 1 a.m. when police knocked on her door. 30 seconds earlier, there were no visible marks on her face. When she opened it, there was blood everywhere, and nobody had been inside that apartment. Nobody except her. May 2020. The UK was deep in lockdown. A 20-year-old woman made a Facebook post claiming she had been abducted, assaulted, and exploited. The photos she shared were shocking, hard to look at. Within hours, more than 100,000 people had joined a support page. Over £20,000 was raised in just days. There were protests, smashed windows, death threats aimed at innocent men. And just 1 hour after that post went live, she was the one who got arrested. Stay with me, because what actually happened here is darker, stranger, and far more disturbing than it first appears. Barrow-in-Furness, a small port town in northwest England, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. In 2020, it was also the hardest-hit COVID town in the entire UK. Streets were empty, people were isolated, lives were being lived through screens, and that was the world Ellie Williams posted into. Ellie was 20, living alone after constant conflict with her mother and stepfather. Her mother, Alison Williams, was an employment advisor. Well-known, well-liked, the kind of person people described as a pillar of the community. Ellie was different. Friends described her as withdrawn. A little low, she skipped school sometimes, turned up at private house parties. Nothing that, on its own, looked like a clear warning sign. But here's what almost nobody outside police knew. They had been dealing with Ellie Williams for years. It started with a party. Ellie finished work early and posted on Snapchat. Friends immediately started messaging her. "Come out. It's small. Just a few drinks. Nothing serious." At first she said no, then she said yes. The party was at a 22-year-old man's house. His name was Cameron. According to Ellie, the two of them went upstairs. They had a shot of vodka. Then she said he tried to kiss her. She didn't want that. She said she was going to the bathroom. And that was when he grabbed her by the hair, pulled her back, and forced her to the floor. She said she blacked out. When she woke up, she was at home. Then the Snapchat messages started coming in. "I drugged you, robbed you, dumped you, and I have HIV." She went straight to the hospital. Police got involved. Cameron was questioned. He denied everything. He said he was shocked by the screenshots. He said Ellie had become so drunk that he actually called her sister to come pick her up. He told police he had been worried about her. Police couldn't prove what had happened. Cameron was released. Ellie later dropped the allegations. But he remained on bail for 6 months, and that could have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 years later, Ellie was 19 and living on her own. On May 9th, 2019, she walked into the police station with bruising across her face. This time there was a new name, Jordan Trano. She told police he had attacked her with a knife, beaten her, and sexually assaulted her multiple times. She showed them messages she claimed were from him. "You wanted this. I should have filmed it so I could relive it. I'll find you again and leave you to die." Police questioned Jordan. He denied everything. He confirmed they had spent time together in March, but said that at some point Ellie simply disappeared. He said he hadn't even noticed her leave because he had been speaking with another girl, Ebony, for much of the night. Police already knew something else. They had seen Jordan arguing near a taxi rank that same night and had driven him and Ebony home themselves. The two of them then spent the rest of the night at his place. That was a very strong alibi. Jordan was released on bail. But then, just a few days later, Ellie called police again. This time she said Jordan had broken into her apartment and attacked her a second time. Police couldn't ignore that risk. Jordan Trano was arrested, charged with 3 counts of rape, and sent to Preston Prison, to the sex offenders unit. He pleaded not guilty to all of it. And while he sat there waiting for trial, the entire town had already decided he was guilty. A month later, Ellie went missing. That, on its own, wasn't entirely new. Her family had called police multiple times over the years. She always turned up eventually, but this time, when she came back, there were more bruises, signs of alcohol, possibly drugs. And when she returned to the station to give another statement, what she said next made detectives go completely silent. She said that when she was 12 years old, at parties she never should have been at, she met a man she called Remy. She said Remy was actually Mohammed Rahman, a local businessman, married, 4 children, well-known, well-respected. According to Ellie, he started paying attention to her almost immediately, made her feel special, important, like she mattered to him in a way nobody else did. Then she said, things took a much darker turn. At one party, she said, he asked her for a favor, to be with one of his friends. She said it happened. And then it happened again. Over time, Ellie claimed Muhammad was making money from her, that she was being taken to houses in towns hours away, Rochdale, Oldham, that there was a wider network, more than 50 girls. She even claimed he had tried to move her to Amsterdam for 25,000 euros. Now you have to understand why that hit detectives so hard. Rochdale was not just another name. Everyone in that room knew what Rochdale meant. One of the largest child sexual exploitation scandals ever uncovered in the UK. 9 men convicted in 2012. More than 47 officially identified victims. Combined prison sentences totaling hundreds of years. And now it was happening again, right there in Barrow? Police moved fast. They found Ellie new housing outside town because they feared for her safety. They put together a dedicated investigative team. And they arrested Mohammed Rahman for questioning. He was stunned. He said he barely knew Ellie, denied everything. After 48 hours, police had to let him go. But the investigation was only beginning. Over the next few months, Ellie was almost constantly at the police station, working closely with investigators, telling them everything, and the amount of detail she gave was striking. The shops she passed, the sounds she heard, wallpaper colors in hallways, streetlights, calendars on walls inside houses. So investigators asked if she would be willing to go back to Blackpool, one of the places she had described, in an unmarked car and identify specific locations. She said yes, but the moment they arrived in Blackpool, the memories stopped. Somewhere around here. I don't know. I'm not sure. They spent 2 full days driving around the city. Nothing specific. Nothing usable. At the same time, other officers were visiting hotels and bed and breakfasts in the area, asking whether anyone had booked a room in Ellie Williams' name on June 30th. At the Seaview Hotel, they got an answer. Ellie had booked a room online 2 days earlier through booking.com. CCTV showed her arriving alone at 8:30 p.m., calm, by herself. About an hour later, she left, went to nearby shops, bought instant noodles and milk, and went straight back to her room. Keycard data showed that after that, the door did not open again for almost 24 hours. She never left. No one came in. Digital records showed she was logged into BBC iPlayer, watching videos on her phone, alone. This was the same night she had told police men were driving her from place to place. Then officers began going door to door, speaking to every girl Ellie had named as a victim of the trafficking ring. Not one of them knew what police were talking about. One girl said she was stunned when officers showed up at her door. She said she had only ever been at one party with Ellie, and nothing had happened. She said she had always felt there was something a little off about Ellie's behavior, but nothing like this. At that point, the conclusion was becoming impossible to avoid. Ellie Williams had been lying. Police had enough to arrest her, but when they went to confront her, she had disappeared again. It was Jordan's brother's girlfriend who found her. Late at night, she was driving around town looking for Ellie when she spotted her alone on a bridge. Disoriented, unsteady. She got Ellie into the car, drove her home, made sure she went inside, and then called police immediately. 20 minutes later, officers arrived at the apartment. Ellie opened the door. There was blood coming from her mouth. Her eyes were swollen. Her shoulders were covered in red marks. But Jordan's brother's girlfriend had seen her just 20 minutes earlier. There had been no blood, no marks, nothing. Neighbors heard nothing, saw nothing. No one had come in. There was only one explanation left. The injuries appeared to have been caused inside that apartment, without anyone else being there. But here's what police still didn't know. While Ellie was sitting in that cell, the photos she had already taken of her injuries were being posted to Facebook. And while she was in custody, the entire country was about to erupt. I think this is the hardest post I've ever had to write. That was how it began. She described being forced into a car, driven to an unknown address, forced into sexual acts with 3 men, assaulted, held against her will, moved from place to place, even across borders. The photos showed her eyes swollen shut, her face almost unrecognizable. The post spread instantly. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. A Justice for Ellie page reached 100,000 members. A fundraiser raised more than £20,000. Posters went up all over Barrow. There were protests in the streets. Windows were smashed. Asian business owners, men with absolutely no connection to the case, watched their livelihoods collapse overnight. One lost 95% of his sales in a single day. Another had to borrow money from family just to survive. Muhammad Rahman said he could no longer walk down the street without people turning to stare. He felt like a convicted man. Jordan Trano was still in prison, still in the sex offenders unit, still waiting for trial on charges he had always denied. And inside the investigation, one question was becoming impossible to ignore. How did this get this far? This is where everything starts to fall apart. When investigators searched Ellie's apartment, they found 8 hammers. 8. They also seized multiple phones. With Snapchat's cooperation, they obtained her full account data. Professor Lee Grant, a forensic linguistics specialist, analyzed every message. His conclusion was clear. Every message supposedly sent by her abusers had actually been written by Ellie. Every single one. Jordan's Snapchat account, created by Ellie, a contact she reported to police as a trafficker. It was actually Harry Cooper, someone she had known since school, someone she had exchanged romantic messages with. Investigators said she changed his contact name so that when he called, she could show the incoming call to police and claim it was one of the traffickers contacting her. She even used a phone provided by a local charity for abuse survivors to impersonate another alleged victim, someone she called Nicole, making the network appear more real and more extensive than it was. And then there was the hammer. Forensic testing on the hammer, found in the field where police located Ellie, revealed DNA from one person. Ellie Williams, a pathologist, concluded her injuries were consistent with blows delivered by her own right hand. CCTV showed her buying that exact hammer days earlier, and it also confirmed she had been completely alone throughout the night. It was an astonishing turn, not just because of what the evidence showed, but because of how much had already happened before the truth began to surface. The trial began in October 2022 and lasted 10 weeks. It was one of the most complex cases Cumbria police had ever built. The defense called Dr. Lucy Bacon, a forensic psychiatrist who had evaluated Ellie multiple times. Her diagnosis was complex PTSD, which she said stemmed from childhood trauma. She also referred to suicidal thoughts, substance misuse, and the possibility that there had been undisclosed sexual abuse in Ellie's early life. Social services had been involved with the family until Ellie was 8, although the details remain unknown. The prosecution called Dr. Martin Locke. He said he could not diagnose Ellie with any psychiatric disorder. On the stand, Ellie denied hurting herself. She said, "I'm not a psychopath." The jury deliberated for 3.5 hours. Guilty, 8 counts of perverting the course of justice. The sentencing was broadcast on television, something that is extremely unusual in the UK. The judge was blunt. He said Ellie had fabricated serious sexual allegations against a large number of men between October 2017 and March 2020, that she created false messages, that she manipulated friends and co-workers without their knowledge, that she invented entire people, that every woman she named as a co-victim of trafficking had been interviewed, and none of them had been trafficked. He said her injuries were completely inconsistent with the account she gave and entirely consistent with having been caused with the hammer she bought herself. He also said there was no clear explanation for why she had done it. But then he said something else, something that stayed with people. He said there was a real risk that genuine victims of sexual violence, because of what Ellie Williams had done, would now be afraid to come forward. The sentence was 8.5 years. She will first be eligible for parole in 2027. The impact was devastating. In every direction. Jordan Trano spent 10 weeks in a sex offenders unit for crimes he did not commit. After he was released, he had to leave Barrow entirely. On his first day in a new place, someone shouted "rapist" at him in the street. He was diagnosed with complex PTSD. He attempted to take his own life. He became a father in August 2021, but said it was difficult to bond with his son while the case kept dragging on. Muhammad Rahman said his reputation was destroyed, that he couldn't go outside, that he reached a point of extreme despair, that his children slept with fire extinguishers and baseball bats beside their beds because of the threats, that most of the town believed he was a sex offender. Oliver, the young man Ellie accused of being a trafficker, an apprentice electrician who had simply approached her for a light while out celebrating his birthday, left his job, left his studies, spent months in mental health support. Cameron said the online abuse became so intense that he was afraid to pick up his child from daycare. Men Ellie had never even named said they still look over their shoulders when they walk down the street. Cumbria police had to investigate more than 150 crimes that resulted directly from Ellie's post. 83 of those were classified as hate crimes. The £20,000 plus raised through crowdfunding, supposedly for private prosecutions against Ellie's alleged abusers, largely disappeared. Allison Williams said £13,000 had been donated to homelessness charities. Shane Yell, who organized the fundraiser, took legal action to try to recover the money. After an anti-fraud review, the bank returned just over £7,000. Allison was suspended from the Labour Party, and Ellie's case was later cited directly in the UK's Online Safety Act 2023 as a real-world example of the damage caused by viral misinformation. Why? That is the question nobody has been able to answer fully. The judge said it, the investigators said it. Even the people closest to her couldn't explain it. There are theories. Some believe she was imitating storylines she had seen in movies or television, Taken, or the BBC drama Three Girls, which was based on the real Rochdale cases. Others point to years of drug and alcohol misuse. Spice, the synthetic drug she had reportedly used, can cause severe psychosis. But the theory that seems to resonate most with the people who worked this case is simpler. One investigator put it this way: she had an overwhelming need to be believed, desperate to be believed, and the timing could not have been more charged. Post #MeToo, post Rochdale, post Rotherham. A culture already hyper-alert to exactly the kind of story she was telling. A culture ready to believe and react before asking hard questions. People saw themselves in her, their daughter, their sister, their friend. They felt her pain before verifying a single fact. And that instinct, that immediate emotional response, was turned into a weapon, whether consciously or not. The defense psychiatrist suggested there may have been trauma in Ellie's past that was never fully disclosed, that something may have happened before the age of 8 that nobody had publicly addressed. Maybe. But that does not change what happened to the men whose lives were torn apart. Maggie Oliver, the former detective who helped expose the failures in Rochdale, who later left Greater Manchester Police and became a whistleblower, and who initially supported Ellie's family, said this case left her deeply shaken. She asked a question that still doesn't have an easy answer. How do real survivors feel now? Will they hesitate to come forward? Will they be afraid they won't be believed? One of the lead detectives said that fear was real, that the possibility of even one case deterring genuine victims was one of the most upsetting parts of the entire investigation. Adele, one of the business owners whose livelihood was destroyed, put it this way: "We were declared guilty before there was any evidence. We were tried and convicted by social media." Ellie wrote a letter of apology to the judge. She partially admitted she had lied, said she had acted wrongly in certain situations, said she had not been thinking clearly when she made that Facebook post. Her mother still believes there is a version of this story the public does not know, that if people understood what Ellie had really lived through, they might see it differently. Maybe that is true. Maybe there is more beneath the surface. But here is what we know for certain. Innocent men tried to end their lives. A community tore itself apart. Real survivors of abuse watched this unfold and felt the ground shift beneath them. And a 22-year-old woman is sitting in a prison cell. The question that everyone, the judge, the detectives, the families, the men whose names were dragged through the mud, keeps returning to is the same one. Why? Because sometimes the most terrifying answer of all is that there may not be a complete answer. If this case made you think twice about what you share online, or how quickly a story can spiral into something that destroys real lives, leave a comment below. I want to know what hit you hardest about this case. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the kind of story we cover here every single week. See you in the next one.